everybody, and welcome back to, I guess, a late afternoon session here at OSCC 16. If you're watching earlier, you'll probably have seen me hosting a panel where we were looking at beyond the viewer, so future of virtual world interfacing. And this panel is like a leap forward from that because we're going to be looking at other social virtual worlds. Now, in a sense, we're not talking here about open sim worlds per se, but there is actually a lot of connection here. And I'm not going to go through their full bios. You can read the epic stories up up on our website. But I'm going to introduce the folks that we actually have here today. I'm some reason I'm getting a bit of weird echoey thing on the Skype call. That seems to be better. Okay, sorry, I think I had a little bit of feedback of some sort. Right, sitting next to me, I'm pleased to say we've been joined by somebody who I'm following quite a lot these days. His name, avatar name, and indeed his Twitter handle is RoblemVR, otherwise known as Rob Krasko. Yes, I think that's right. And yeah, okay.
Yep, you got it right.
Right. As I say, twitter.com/RoblemVR is a must follow stream really for all news on the VR front. The very headsets and tactile interfaces and body costumes and who knows what else that are coming along these days. And particularly, of course, with our focus here, which is going to be really looking at social VR, both the way the technology gets involved with that, and the so-called VR platforms, quote, that actually do represent what we know as our social VR, so to speak. So welcome, Rob.
Thanks for having me.
And next to Rob, somebody who you saw earlier, he gave his great presentation on a possible blueprint for a possible future metaverse, complete with planets. Is none other than Will Burns. Will Burns, of course, has this kind of overview of interconnected worlds and things, which almost supersede everything else we talk about. So I'm delighted to have him on this panel too. Welcome, Will.
Thank you very much. Great to be back.
And on my other side, next to me, I have somebody probably fairly well known to a lot of you. His name is Adam Frisby. He's CEO of a new platform that has really pretty much gone live in a sense very recently. A lot of people on Google Plus who are familiar to you from OpenSim have been popping over there to play and be serious as well, no doubt. And it's a world from his company Sinewave, but the world itself is just called, very simply, space. And I guess that ties in with Will Burns' concept of the metaverse, doesn't it? Space. But anyway, Adam is behind this. And although this is built with Unity or developed with Unity tools and things included, it is very much what I would see as a social virtual world. And we'll get a little bit more into that in a while. But welcome, Adam.
Thank you.
And next to Adam, we have Dig VJ. I've got that. I think I've got it. Dig VJ Tiwari. Oh, I didn't even look at the surname. I'm terrible here, and I haven't got my glasses on, have I? Yeah, Tiwari. Dig. I'm going to call you Dig. Do you want to tell me?
Yeah, that's fine.
Do you want to tell us how to pronounce that name?
Just Dig or Diggy is fine.
Okay, Diggy. Yeah, I like that one. Yeah, much easier. Diggy is, I suppose, more responsible for the content. Actual content and building side of what is in the space platform, and which will be, I think, of great interest to folks here too. So welcome, Diggy.
Thanks, Mal.
Okay, now something I haven't mentioned in all those intros deliberately is you may think, oh, well, we're talking other social platforms. You're going to run off now and think, hey, this isn't OpenSim. What's going on? But actually, there is a very strong link here. Will Burns has been around Second Life and Dare.com and I don't know how many other virtual worlds over the years, and is still around in them. Robland VR here, despite his, shall I say, latter-day reputation that I've just mentioned, has been in Second Life and indeed in OpenSim for about 10 years. So he's not at all unfamiliar with these platforms. Adam Frisby was one of the original core developers here and has unimaginable experience with developing for OpenSim. And as we'll find out in the course of things, it is quite possible, for example, to, although we're talking about separate platforms, methods of deployment of things do tend to interact. For example, well, you can ask me directly, Adam. I believe, for example, that OpenSim is actually used for creating a lot of stuff that is then exported and deployed into space.
To a degree, yes. I guess if you want to actually launch into this as a full question, it's a bit of a complicated answer. We have got some content porting tools. I know a few people have been experimenting with actually bringing in OARs into space. There's been some work done with by Austin Tate and Nebadon have both been testing out the OAR exporter and bringing a lot of content in. It's one approach you can take, but I think that, and I think we can get into this in a bit more detail
Sure.
further onto the call, but the quality of content will be reduced comparatively to the stuff that's sort of built natively in space. That sort of lets you take advantage of a lot more functionality that doesn't really exist in the OpenSim ecosystem yet.
Yeah, I just like the idea that at however elementary level it is, there is this kind of sense of interoperability, you know, for people, for example, who want to prototype on both platforms and maybe want a bit of duplicity between two. So things looking good there. Okay, now there are, of course, I'm going to come to Roblam here first for his sort of, you know, basically a rundown, if you've got one, Rob, of what's out there at the moment. Obviously, we have space, which we'll be talking about as an example shortly, but we have VR chat, and we've got all sorts of things that are coming in with this wave of hardware. You know, before you had an Oculus helmet, they didn't bother having VR chat, for example, but now they want it just to put it in the helmets, even though arguably it looks a bit suspect. Well, what is your overview about what's happening at the moment, particularly with a focus on what we might call social VR?
Yeah, well, I tell people what I call the neo VR people, you know, people that are very new to this, that social VR is going to be, that's the killer app for virtual reality. It's not going to be a tilt brush, and it's not going to be a particular game. There's not going to be a halo of virtual reality. It's going to be the fact that you go into virtual reality to meet with other people. You know, we know this from, you know, 10 years of doing, you know, social virtual reality. I mean, it's a flat screen, but it's still a virtual world, you know, that we interact with. You go in there to find someone that you met before. You go in there to listen to a DJ. You go in there to visit a build. To be social with other people. That's the key thing that a lot of the, you know, new VR people are starting to pick up on. That's the thing that's going to give people traction. It's a reason for people to go back in. And there's still a lot of focus on individualized experiences, which the new VRs are very good at. Things like NextVR are getting to sporting events and concerts and things like that. But it's still, you're sitting by yourself. It's the shared experience. Sure. I think that's going to be the real to things.
I mean, personally, I love what I have to say I call surround vision. I know at least one person is screaming blue murder now, saying it's not, it's panoramic VR or something. But I actually love it.
360 video,
yeah, but I don't quite think of it as VR. I suppose in terms of being able to see it in a headset, it's VR, but to me, it's not immersive. It's simply an experience. And I think it's actually wonderful, especially when you consider the way it might tie in with augmented reality, where you just switch from additional information into a full simulation and back and stuff like that. But as you rightly point out, it is not the social space, which I think there's who've been doing this for a decade or more, really consider to be the key factor. As I said earlier, OpenSim has, a decade of development of content and, most importantly, community. And, we can't do it, none of these other things have it. But the question is how we are going to be approaching that in the future, so to speak. Right, let's Adam, while we're talking about VR in general, how much do you personally think the new hardware interfaces, be it an output device like a screen on your head of some sort, or an input device like we see with Leap Motion and eye tracking, how important do you think these are going to be both to world and the spaces we see in the future, particularly the social spaces?
I think in the long term, important. And by long term, I mean nowhere in the next 5 years. Yeah. In the short term, I'm not very confident about it. And I've played around with a lot of these systems. And the reason why I'm giving them the sort of the vote of no confidence from me is a combination of factors. First, no one wants to wear a VR headset for more than 20 minutes. I think that you'll see that across a wide range of people. There is very few people who can tolerate that. It's either a combination of build-up of motion sickness, or it just feels uncomfortable. It's heavy. It weighs on your neck. You feel that it's not really something that's comfortable to wear for long periods of time.
And I think I'll just interject there. I mean, something I would add to that is it's too immersive. In other words, even if it's comfortable, right, that the disconnect from even 1% of reality, as it were, is really just a bit much after a while. There's a wonderful film going about where somebody's wearing an Oculus, and in the space of 2 minutes, burglars come into the window, strip their flat naked, because they actually have no tactile connection with the real world. They can't hear the intruders. They can't see them. They're in a headset, sat in a corner, and their flat gets stripped. So I would actually add to that. Just that because we're talking about social in some ways, and there's an extent to which we're talking about a social disconnect in this scenario. But I'm sorry, I interrupted there. Carry on, Adam.
So that's really where I am on the headsets. I think ultimately in the future, those problems will be solved. Someone will eventually get a pair of high-resolution VR goggles that look and feel and weigh the same amount as a pair of sunglasses. I'm sure that will happen. And when that day comes, they will sell like hotcakes and everyone will have one. On the other side, you asked about input devices. And input devices are a bit more interesting. I still feel that most of them are not very good. You can't really interact with the environments very well, and they do need to be paired with headsets. But there's some exciting opportunities there. And I think, again, it sort of has to wait around. We have to wait for the hardware to mature. We have to wait for the interfaces to mature. And I think we're really talking another 5 years before they're actually something that everyone will want to own and buy. It would be interesting to see how long people actually do use the hardware that's begun shipping in the more mass market things. For instance, PlayStation VR. I'll be very interested to know in about 3 years' time whether people are still releasing new VR games for those platforms and whether users are still playing them. Because I think that's the first sort of step that's taken towards a sort of a mass market adoption of VR. I just don't know if it's got the legs to really run far at the moment.
Yeah. I would tend to agree. Will, obviously you've got a great perception all over the future blueprints of the way metaverses will work, or a metaverse and its layers will work. But as far as this hardware is concerned, your blueprints are all about the spaces, much less than the interfacing. But do you personally think that these advanced tactile, haptic, and surround interfaces are going to become almost a prerequisite, or do you think it will be a niche market?
Muffins. No, I think I'm on board with what Adam is saying. See, when people talk about VR or the saturation of that market, my first question with any technology is going to be, okay, what is the killer application of that platform? And I saw somebody in chat here say earlier that VR is the killer app, and I would have to disagree, because we have VR for 20 or 30 years now, and it hasn't hit saturation. It hasn't hit the big, everybody wants to do it thing. So my thought is, with any kind of technology, I say, well, what is your killer app? Like, what is the thing that compels people to use this every day in a long-term fashion that becomes useful that they can't do elsewhere? Like, what makes this more compelling than anything else? And I'm with Adam on that. I say about 5 or 10 years as the technology matures, because honestly, my thought process is probably going to diverge from Adam on that one, because my thought process is the way that VR is going with the headsets and all that are actually innovating themselves out of a market. And what I mean by that is that the things that they're coming up with are actually, it's kind of like you go to hire somebody in a new company, and the person who's there, who's the elder, or the person who's been there for a while, you pick that person to train the new person, right? And you know darn well at that point that you're probably either getting a pink slip or a promotion, because you're training your replacement.
Yeah.
And we're in that situation now with virtual reality, where the headsets are the elder, and they are essentially training their replacement, which I believe would be similar hardware benefiting from, say, augmented reality and mixed reality, because at which point you can say, on a daily basis, I could use AR, I could use MR, I could use a HoloLens or a Magic Leap kind of headset, and they're like sunglasses. They're patents for sunglasses type styles, because the MPU is on your hip, and that is a lot more compelling when you pair it with, okay, what happens when you I talk about this a lot too on the blog and elsewhere. I say, what happens when you take the virtual reality and start mixing it with reality? Like, what happens, can it compete if you've got a dragon in your backyard for real that you've got to slay, or you got to throw a virtual fire? Can you possibly compete with that? If you linked up an AR headset with Google Maps and turned every street in your neighborhood into a Pac-Man maze, and you had 3D virtual ghosts running up and down, you had to go run for a mile, could you compete with that? And the thing that AR to me does as the logical successor is that it solves the one thing that VR is going to have a problem solving, and that is locomotion. Right now we have a point and click mentality, right? We had to click to teleport, but that's not what you want to do when you put on a headset. You want to put on a headset, what do you want to do? You see these vast, amazing environments. The first thing you want to do is you want to take a run for it, right? You want to run around, you want to, but now you got to point and click. So you're like, A to B, A to B, A to B. So you're missing the in-between spatial understanding of it, and that kind of kills the experience a little bit. Yes, they're fun. Yes, yes, you can stand in one position. Like if you read the Oculus Rift best practices document, they say, for the love of God, don't let them run around. For the love of God, don't put them on a roller coaster. For the love of God, don't let them move too much. So you see these games like you're standing in one spot shooting arrows, or you're point and click. They don't let you do the one thing that you want to do in here is run. You want to run around, explore, and have the motion, and that's something that AR and MR is going to give. And I think that's when it's going to just beat it into the ground. That's where the killer app's going to be.
I must say I'm very keen on, although I don't like the headset so much, the weight and the immersion, full immersion. I do like these like running bikes where you will actually be looking at a screen and cycling through VR, or you'll be on a kind of treadmill thing where you won't actually move much on the spot, but you can do all the running you need. And something like Nebadon's Grand Canyon build in space, you can do
the omnidirectional treadmills and stuff, but really. Which one of you out there is going to go spend another $1,000 or $2,000 for all the hardware to get an omnidirectional treadmill and and all the tracking and all that? I mean, not the average person. So we're back to square one.
But you do, not the average person for sure. But you do get people who are so into their fitness regimes and stuff that they have a mini gym in their own residence. And maybe one day we'll be all locked in cubicles in virtual worlds.
We will
need it.
Man, if you've got a mini gym in your residence, I'm coming over to visit tonight.
Yeah, well, I don't, but I'm just being hypothetical here. Okay, that's interesting. Somebody in chat, somebody very familiar, and of course, chat is moving so fast here, I can't keep up, mentioned something that, I think it was Pathfinder actually, mentioned something that Rob, you will be very familiar with on the feeds, and that is this very elusive Magic Leap. Massive investment. We've known they're manufacturing all their kit for ages and ages. Yet at the same time, every week there seems to be a news feed that says, "Well, maybe not quite so imminent."
Yep. Yes, Magic Leap. I'm the big critic of Magic Leap.
Yeah, well, we haven't seen it yet, have we?
Yeah. Well, that's the problem. It's he's got this big blown vision for projected light field, light field projectors, which would give you this amazing, visual experience, full depth, ability to focus on objects and stuff like that. The problem is that technology is decades away, literally. And that would be the glasses, the thin glasses you want to put on your face. And now it seems like it is going to be decades away, because right now what they're talking about is very much more like a HoloLens type experience. What's supposedly what their first generation is going to be, which we already have a HoloLens, don't we? So where's this amazing technology that was supposed to completely throttle any VR experiences? And it feels very much like a bait and switch type of situation. But of course, we still don't know what this stuff looks like. They're not even opening up to developers yet. Developers are going to have to come down to their offices to
sneak preview.
Seeing it. Kind of crazy, and just all the fake videos that have been debunked, showing these amazing experiences, and it's all false. There is no giant whale splashing in the middle of an auditorium with children cheering, with no glass.
Yeah, it's
anything on that doesn't exist.
Cinema special effects promising the future.
However, the juxtaposition in that there are things with Lem in Star Wars as demos, and those are real. So while they do the promo videos, I wouldn't completely discount them.
Oh, I know there are two they showed, but we don't know whether that's with their giant system. I think they call it the Beast or something like that. That's that's on a rack and there's a large box that goes over your head, or whether that was shot with their actual headsets. Right now, we're kind of in a fuzzy position with them. I'm not writing them off completely.
I mean, we will be in a fuzzy position until they actually release something.
I think HoloLens is a bit of a mystery to me, and personally, I'm very dubious about trusting anything with Microsoft's name on it. But I've sort of seen this thing. It's like having like a semi-holographic image on a table, and I realize there are parallels to in our social virtual worlds, for example. We don't just use them for social purposes. We have classes in there, and we have conferences, would you believe? Oh, well, I think we have conferences, don't we? Yeah. And some of the thing, we had one this morning where somebody rezzed a train set. Well, virtual train on the stage here. And we are used to sort of people using the 3D space, usually on a flat screen, of course, to date, to actually put down a 3D object and allow you to walk around it. And maybe they can do things to it to show you the inner workings of something. And of course, what the promise of these semi-holographic things is that you will be able to do the sort of same thing too. You'll be able to have maybe a sort of model of a dinosaur on a table in the middle of your room that you can move around and see very high resolution detail, and possibly have somebody else in another room somewhere else connected with you via a network, so you both, although you're in separate geographic locations, you are both in the same place to view that model. So I kind of wonder, it's a long way off, but that technology may actually offer similar things to what we currently use, fully fledged virtual environments for. Diggy, let me bring you into this conversation because we're in danger of leaving you out on your own there. That example I just gave, right,
Yeah.
is content, essentially. Maybe you're the person I should ask about the durability of content. For example, could you foresee designing content in space that you will be designing with a view to exporting it from space for use elsewhere? Likewise, would you see, the opportunities for creating content that you would create outside and then bring into space? And Adam actually demoed to me the other day the difference between the complexity of tools, like the big tool set, the Unity Plus tool set, and also the modifiable tools that you can actually use when you're in the world. So you've already got this sort of bridge. How do you see the future of content developing here in terms of being deployable over a range of different places? I know, for example, I have unfortunately forgotten the name of it, but there is a file format I'm seeing promoted in the tech streams at the moment, for example, that is supposed to be an enclosure wrapper that can include FBX and OBJ files, and can even one file can contain a whole scene complete with the lighting and everything else. Do you see much of a future for this?
Yes, because we're using standard formats. It's basically interchangeable with every game development standards, and it's also compatible with VR. So, yeah, I mean, in future we can integrate with anything. Like even VR comes out or HoloLens comes out, it will be pretty easy.
Right. So the opportunities really here are for. How should I say this? It's not quite what we see as interoperability in the sense of being able to, hypergrid from OpenSim into space or something, but the very nature of the more advanced tools that offer certain things, and maybe the older tools that offer other things. There are clearly opportunities here, aren't there, for the content transfer, if not the actual interoperability, on the ground of the worlds themselves.
Yes.
Now, coming back to space, there was yet another social VR. I forget. I'm sorry, folks. I'm getting a bit absent-minded here. I've forgotten the name of them too. They've launched out of Liverpool in the UK here, and I signed up for beta the other day, and I did it on my iPad, and I downloaded it. It's actually meant for the iPhone, and it doesn't work on the iPad, so go forget it. But it was a very similar, compelling-looking social environment. I think it's in beta, and I'll pass on that. We've also got platforms like High Fidelity, which, of course, Philip Rosedale, who created Second Life, is really behind that. Starting from scratch, building the world anew. That actually seems to have, in the case of High Fidelity, you're going to have these distributed spaces. The server that's on your own computer is very much part of the equation. Whereas even good old Linden Labs are coming up with something new. They call it Project Sansar, which seems to be a case of it sounds like it's lost a lot of the real interactivity, because although you can be present with other people in it, if you want to build a room and in a space there, I think I gather you're going to either have to put parts together from templates, or you're going to have to import something offline, and then it's like a blog. You're going to have to click publish. So you won't be able to put that thing down in real time, and share it with your friends. It might take 5 minutes to publish it or something like that, but it takes that immediacy of these social environments and creative environments, by extension, kind of away. Now, how does space operate in this sense? It's really modeled. I'll come back to you, Adam. It's really modeled, isn't it, to be a totally like OpenSim, a real-time environment, even though the tools for creativity a bit more complex?
Yeah, so we've got a bit of a hybrid option. The advantages of offline content development are very significant. There is everything from being able to run your lighting bakes through a high quality offline renderer. Things like that take hours to run potentially. If you've got a large scene that has got thousands and thousands of lights casting shadows across hundreds of square kilometers, you're going to need to run that on an offline bake, and it will take a while to run. That is one of the sort of the benefits of having an offline process. It's what gives the ability for a AAA new release video game to look like a AAA new release video game. Those sort of high quality offline tools. On the other hand, there is some real benefits to the social side of being able to sort of spawn things on demand on the ground, to be able to update and edit a room and build it as you go as an end user without needing to pull out complex and expensive offline building tools. So our approach is we've gone with a sort of a hybrid. You can use offline building tools. We thoroughly encourage you to use offline building tools if you want to produce the highest quality content. All of our creators at the moment, we're really pushing down that path. But at the same time, we have at the moment a room editor, which is optimized for end users. And we basically were inspired by The Sims as far as the interface went. We wanted something that you didn't have to learn the basics of 3D modeling in order to build something. You could just drag and drop furniture and so forth onto a ground and move it around with the simplicity that The Sims gives you. We've actually come up over the last couple of weeks, we've been expanding that editor and building a full 3D editor on top of it. So that you've got this sort of evolutionary pathway where you can start out in the simple approach and then you can migrate yourself up to the more advanced tools. And those advanced tools are similar to the ones used in those offline building tools, so that there's a stepping stone. You can sort of take it and you can move your way up to, depending on the level of quality and what kind of content you're looking to build. I mean, if you're looking to build a really complex, high detail environment, those offline tools are faster. I've been whipping up a lot of demo regions, which I think screenshots have been floating around, and there was a video I put up the other day of a science fiction city. I built that in about 4.5 hours. It is about 1 kilometer square, so I guess about the equivalent of 16 or so OpenSim regions, tens of thousands of objects, fairly high detail. Having the user interface that these offline editors give you gives you a huge benefit. I mean, being able to drag and move the camera around everywhere in the scene at a moment's notice, being able to focus on various objects, cut and paste, all those bits and pieces are sort of essential to rapid building of high quality content. And you don't really get those if you try and stuff those into a viewer. We cannot make a 3D modeler that is better than Maya. We cannot make a 3D modeler that's better than Blender. There is no reason for us to try and compete with those products. Instead, what we would like to do is sort of integrate and absorb the good parts of all of them and let you work in an efficient, high-quality workflow, but at the same time preserve the ability to have the spontaneous in-world building.
I must say, I loved on your demo. I got the notion that, you know, that I think it's the sci-fi build where you had all the cars running around.
Yeah,
and,
that
that avatar really looked absolutely scared to cross the road because, you know, it was like real life. You know, you got to wait.
You can get hit by those cars and they will bounce you around the sim.
I know. So, you know, we have collision stuff here and stuff, but I mean, there was something extremely compelling about that. Like, you know, you're going to have to wait there for 10 minutes until there's no cars around to cross the road. You know, so, you know, obviously that was, you know, not created live in the world itself, but I mean, it shows because of, you know, what it's capable of when you see it. Wonderful stuff. Something that I'm not going to ask Will to repeat some of his blueprint ideas and things, but something that certainly High Fidelity is doing, forgetting worlds that you may have to create and then deploy, or interactive worlds where you've got elementary tools in them, is the idea that when High Fidelity's case, for example, when you run, before you can run the actual viewer, you actually have to run the sandbox program on your own computer. So it's a bit like OpenSim's Sim on a Stick. The idea is that, you know, the core of the thing is operating on your desktop. We'll use that metaphor for the moment. And it is that is connected to a distributed network. Will will tell us, for example, that there's a great economic future in that, because you're contributing to the economy of a system just by being connected to the network, for elementary things. And then the more you do or allow, then the more your credits, it's like being, it's not a question of earning Linden type currencies in world. You'll be earning credits for being online and contributing your server to the pool. That's sort of it, isn't it, Will, without going into the greater depth of it?
Right. You just create a bunch of reasons for people to want to contribute, and then you have the system reward them for doing so. The higher they go, the more they can earn, and the less of a restriction you would think they would see.
So again, coming down to a sort of blueprint. Again, Adam, I'm addressing this to you because you've got experience right across the board here. We have our mobiles and all sorts of things now. I mean, basically, even if you haven't got a desktop powered up, almost everybody, at least in the Western world, seems to be constantly connected these days. Now, of course, we get distractions. Pathfinder was mentioning earlier about, well, if we've got a world on the web, will we actually take notice of the world, or will we be looking at the pop-up distractions in the actual browser? And, there are issues there. But given the concept that people have these connections open, do you actually think there is a compelling future for, say, virtual worlds to actually use this constant connection between the user and the network as a kind of powering base for things? I know space doesn't do that, but do you see a likelihood of moving into that direction?
Yeah, well, we go with a bit on the back end side. We're a host of models, so we've got sort of systems that spin up servers on and off demand. But on the distraction side, I think that's an important point. And it comes down to the compellingness of the content that's in the world, whether you get distracted or not. So one of the things we implemented with Space a while ago, and I'm trying to avoid this becoming sort of a product demo, is that we've got narrative structures and quest lines. So you actually can make MMO-style quests inside a thing, complete with cutscenes, voice acting and lip syncs on your characters. You can animate anything, literally anything. Any property can be animated over a timeline. You've got a dope sheet that you can drop keyframes and things onto for creating your environments. I think if someone builds a high-quality equivalent to AAA game experience, building those tools, I guarantee you that the users who are coming in and looking at those will not be alt-tabbing out. They will be seeing sort of high-powered content, bam, 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 that sort of enthralls the user. On the other side, you've got things like chat. I mean, it's pretty hard to alt-tab out of chat for long periods of time. Maybe you can do it for a couple of seconds, but really you're going to be sort of stuck in there because you're dealing with another person. It's not really possible to put other people on hold. I mean, you can, but if there's something interesting going on, you're not going to. I think that this basically comes down to the root of my answer to your question is it depends on the compellingness of the content. If you've got compelling content, you're going to fight distractions. There's reasons to go there. If people are getting distracted, then you've got to be asking the question, why are they getting distracted? Are they getting bored? Is there not enough going on at once? And that's, I think, the question to answer. I think that I would like to see in the long term virtual worlds shifting towards more high-quality experiences. I mean, no one to date has built the equivalent of a new release video game inside a virtual world. Now, some of that's the technology has not been good enough. On the other hand, it's been also that it's too difficult to do. That I guess that comes back to technology again. It's that the interface and for building tools is not really possible. And also there hasn't been sort of the inspiration, there hasn't been the economy, there hasn't been the market, et cetera, to be able to afford to put 2,000 employees on a project for 3 years building something in a virtual world. But I think that is the future of virtual worlds, is that we are moving both towards bespoke things built by independent developers, independent content creators, as well as sort of big budget productions. And I think that there's a great potential to be able to take your avatar between all of these various environments and do interesting things and see interesting things, and then take the social aspect out of it and actually chat about what's gone on. Did you go play that game? How did you feel? How do you solve this particular puzzle? Those sorts of things I think are very valuable experiences that would sort of improve the compellingness of the content that you're accessing.
I remember, it's like the old standby phrase from the days of Second Life. We were all wandering around saying, Second Life is not a game, it's a virtual world. But of course, it's also to the point that Second Life was not a game, but it had games in it. You look at operations like MadP, who put a heck of a lot of work into those. And so, a MadP experience, a wonderful quest, and people go on it together, so it is social, but it's apart from the platform it's in. It's like a self-contained entity there. You were also telling me the other day, and we are giving a lot of promo to space here, but I think it's relevant. For example, if I want to put on a concert and I, create a well, it works differently, but imagine the 4 regions we've got here and the keynotes, and one of them is the stage. I will get so many people in the surrounding the stage area, and there's like there comes a point where I can't get any more avatars into the region. But something you have in space, I gather, is what I would be able to do is immediately create a new shard of that, where the audience area will be a new extended audience, but the actual stage area will be duplicated in each of these. I think the word is shard. Am I right?
Yeah, we use the word shard for that. Yeah, that is a feature we can switch on. We actually, I'm going to not talk about space for a second. I'm actually going to talk about our previous virtual world. So we've been building, I don't guess we sort of skipped over the background a little bit, but when I left developing OpenSim back in 2010, I moved on to starting the basics of space. Space started in 2009, late 2009. So we actually started off doing sort of corporate brand virtual worlds that people could set up a white label virtual world running the very first version of space. And the next one we did, the next sort of large project that we did ourselves, was something called Res Live, which later got renamed to WetFM. And our goal there was to do sort of live music on a big scale with lots of bands. We actually did a couple of events with about 4,000 concurrent. That was still below the expectations of the bands, but it was high enough that it's sort of beating off other virtual worlds. And a lot of the technology that went into that is now sitting in space. But one of the things we had to develop for that was the ability to sort of automatically shard off regions. So when you get more than 100 and something avatars into a region, you want to be able to fire up a new instance. But you also want to keep the key performers across all the shards. So it sort of has a hybrid sharding where some characters are actually in all of the worlds and some characters are not, depending on what you're doing. But I mean, I say 4,000 concurrent as that sounds impressive, but we actually, and I can't mention the exact bands by name because of NDA, but we spoke with a very, very large band, large metal band, and they gave us sort of 2 conditions for running a large event. And the first condition was that we had to make the band members younger, thinner, and less bald. Which we can do. And the second requirement they had was that they wanted a minimum of 100,000 people for a one-night-only show. And you think about existing virtual world platforms, and you say, all right, I'm going to put 100,000 users on those platforms. And you just know it's going to explode in a shower of nuts and bolts. So that actually formed one of the key requirements for what we've been doing. And things like our sharding does actually sort of play into that. We haven't tested it anywhere near that level of concurrency yet. But in the sort of medium to long term, I absolutely do want to. I want to be able to get 100,000 person events with big name bands in these environments. Because again, that's compelling content.
Well, exactly. I mean, back in the days of Second Life and stuff like that, and to a certain extent on OpenSim, it's this outreach thing. We want to show what can be done. And, the idea that instead of just the local troubadour coming into a cafe on a sim somewhere, you could have a real world band who were interested in this, coming in. You can't even think about it unless, unless you either do it in stealth like Duran Duran do in Second Life, or, I don't know, you just invite 20 private friends in or something. The whole mechanics of doing it. But, we always saw it as the future, something like, because that kind of entertainment actually is very apt that you mentioned it. It's a social activity, going to the gig. it's also a creative activity because it's the music and the gig and maybe the light effects and everything else, combined. And it's something we can potentially, in terms of the show, do better using virtual tools than you could ever create in a stadium or even a club in the real world. So I've always thought of that as a very major part of promoting the Vetiverse. Go online to your gig. But we've faced these obstacles. How would I don't really dare ask this question. There's probably no answer. But down the line, and obviously this is a long way down the line, could even something like, from what you know, Adam, of the OpenSim kind of code we have at the moment, could a long way down the line that be have a sort of sharding system in any way? Or is that just too much to hope for?
I think that I've been out of the code base too long to give you an educated answer. I don't see why not. But I think that there's a lot of complexities involved in setting those things up and getting the resources up and running. And I'm talking about 4,000 concurrent, but do you know how many servers we needed to handle that? That was across, I think, 4 or 5, but that's far more than we need today. The same sort of server running on newer hardware and things, we should be able to get comfortably sort of 5,000 concurrent per physical server. And I think that sort of plays into the economics of it a little bit too. You want to be able to keep the cost per concurrent user as low as possible.
Sure.
I don't see why it wouldn't be possible in the OpenSim architecture. There's other things that are more difficult in the OpenSim architecture, which is one of the reasons I sort of moved on. And that's mainly to do with the content angle, particularly sort of adapting and supporting the latest in what game engines do. That sort of model requires a different server architecture to a degree. Certainly, parts of what OpenSim does very well, and I'd like to pull back into space at some point in the future. There is some very cool things that are going on in that environment. High Fidelity has some great things as well. I will happily say that if you've got a good idea, I will steal it. But yeah, I mean, there's pros and cons to all the various virtual worlds and how their architectures are built. There is nothing, I think, theoretically stopping that kind of sharding working in OpenSim, but there are other things that I think would require a much more significant ground-up rewrite to do.
Okay. Yes, happened again. I'm getting the back channel saying, "Hey, you're nearly finished. You're nearly finished." You just don't believe how quickly an hour or 50 minutes goes. So I think what we need to do is round up. I'd like to go round each of you in turn, and I just get a feel for you individually. You'll feel for the way the future of the area of social worlds is going. We'll forget the old installations and the extra VR stuff, but just the way the social VR landscape is going. And I'll move to you first, Rob, actually, because you probably have the greatest overview of this in terms of what you're doing.
Yeah, what I've seen is there's a lot of different directions that these different worlds are going. I mean, it's a lot of things that Adam said. You go look at a place like AltSpace VR. They bring in a lot of talent. They're doing performance capture, and they're doing a lot of the sharding type technology, but they're also doing replay. So if you didn't catch Reggie Watts live, you can go back in and catch him at a later date. He just won't be live. But there's different things. Like VR Chat has interview shows. That smaller world you couldn't remember the name of, VTime. They have much more intimate spaces. And then if you find that some of these spaces, you meet people in there, you find, well, maybe I'd like my own house. Well, you can't have your own house in VTime. Maybe you have to come over to OpenSim.
Yes.
So I think there's going to be a good place for all these different types of experiences. Not everybody wants to build, so this may be not the most attractive place for them. Maybe they want to go, onto NextVR and watch a football game. But there's going to be a big spectrum of different virtual worlds, and the key part is going to be the social. You're going to want to go with your friends and do some shopping, or go with your friends and run around a 360 video or whatever.
Okay.
Variety.
I'm being poked in the background. Hurry up. Right. Okay. Will, same question. General.
Yeah, I'm going to say that social VR is probably the future. I mean, if we have these like isolating spaces, then it's not going to do much for us. I mean, we'll get our one-on-one time here, but it's like single-player campaign in a video game. But we all know we like multiplayer campaigns, and the massive multiplayer stuff. So of course, social is going to be a huge thing, and the more we can do in a social manner, the more we can hook that up and interconnect them. The more traction we're going to see in both VR, AR, MR, and whatever the industry has. So there's your killer app. Social is killer app.
Indeed. That's a good way of putting it. Diggy, we haven't actually heard much from you, so maybe next, your idea about the landscape, the future of social VR.
Yeah, absolutely, it's great because even now you can see the world is getting smaller and smaller. People meeting in virtual worlds, holding conferences. Right now in this meeting, we have people from everywhere, pretty much. Yep. So in future, it's just going to grow, and people can pretty much meet and do everything in VR instead of traveling and taking a flight and attending actual conferences.
Yeah. Oh, that's always been my thought. Yeah. I mean, here we've got both coasts of America, we've got Australia, and we've got you in India, and I'm stuck in a little island called the UK in the middle. Yeah. Okay, Adam. Forgetting space almost for a minute. Your perspective on the, the landscape of social VR.
I think in the short term, we're going to see some interesting stuff. I think that people are going to pursue virtual reality headsets and gear and hardware, and that we're going to see how things go there. I don't hold a lot of hope, but hey, I think some people are doing some very worthy experiments there, and that's going to sort of solidify the next generation. If all of us, and I speak as everyone who's building and operating virtual worlds, does our job well, in the long term, we're going to create something that is something that everyone can access. You'll be able to get into a virtual world as easily as you can access a web page. You can hop into the spaces. You can pick them up on every device that you own. Ubiquity, and I think that's the point that Digvijay was getting towards. Is that the ability to actually speak with anyone and everything, to show someone anyone and anything, to experience high quality entertainment. I mean, all of those things are the holy grail of virtual worlds, and not just social virtual worlds. I mean, the social part, I think, is inseparable from virtual world to a degree. You can't really build a single player virtual world. And I think that the further you get away from the social aspects, the further away you get from something actually succeeding.
Great. I'm gonna have to cut you there. They're bugging me. I'm 3 minutes over. Okay, I didn't even get round to talking about worlds on the iPads and phones, but that will have to wait for another conversation. It's been absolutely wonderful having you here, and it's been great conversations. So I'd like to thank Roblam VR. Thank you, Rob.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you to Will Burns. Thank you, Will.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Thank you to Diggy.
Thank you.
And thanks very much to Adam Frisby as well.
No problem. I'm back tomorrow to monopolize someone else's panel. So I'll be around then.
Okay, that's wonderful. And that's it for now. I've got to get off to make way for whatever's coming next, and nobody's briefed me on that immediately. So thank you, everybody, and we're out of here.